Hello and welcome to Eureka, coming to you from Science Brainwaves and PH7. In the studio today we have me, Hugh.
Me, Emma.
And me, James.
This week's episode topic is sports science. We're going to be talking about drugs in sport, brain injury in sport, and the limits of human performance. And of course the quiz. But coming up first, we have the news.
So, the first piece of news that we have today is about gene editing being attempted for the first time in human trials.
Oh, yeah.
Which is quite exciting. So, in a world first, clinicians in California have attempted gene editing to treat a man who suffers from Hunter's syndrome, which is a genetic disorder that affects the body's ability to produce functional copies of a protein called IS2, which is important for multiple bodily functions.
Okay. So when they say gene editing, I assume... So Hunter's syndrome is, as it says, a genetic disorder.
Disease, yeah.
So by editing the gene which causes a genetic disorder, that should
Hopefully
solve some problems.
Yeah.
Maybe.
This is in an adult person with Hunter's disease.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Wow.
it says Brian Maddox. I think it's pronounced Maddox. Yeah,
Go for Maddox.
He's 44.
Sorry, Brian, we can't pronounce the last name. Apologies.
Yeah, Brian will
if
be
you're tuning
listening in
in.
like, why? Yeah, apparently he claimed he spent every day in agony, so that's not great. So they've given him this experimental treatment infused into his bloodstream that is hoped will modify his DNA. So it contains 2 zinc finger enzymes capable of slicing DNA at 2 points and allowing the insertion of a new genetic code.
Okay.
So it's
So
quite exciting.
those
I didn't know that you could do that.
those domains will slice his DNA and hopefully put something new in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you've been able to do stuff like this for quite a while in like individual cells.
Yeah, but in a whole.
But like gene editing in an individual cell with like CRISPR-Cas9 as well.
And is it?
That's relatively recent, but it
Yeah.
is doable. But I don't think, obviously, it hasn't been done in like a human before.
Yeah.
I wonder how it proliferates throughout all the cells
That's
in the
what
body.
I was going to
Yeah,
say.
I
Is
was
the
wondering
theory
that.
that like when the cells divide, that means it's just over time as more and more
Well,
cells
I mean,
divide?
if I assume it's targeting differentiated cells, which will mean they won't divide.
Yeah, they won't become every single
They won't
cell.
become every single cell. Yeah. So there's some way to that they're getting it to the place it needs to be. correctly
Yeah,
to-
I suppose if
Maybe-
it's something that only affects a certain
It
system.
might be a disease that like if you had like half functionality, it would be
Yeah.
a lot better than having no
Oh,
functionality.
yeah, that's
perhaps.
true. That's true.
I
That
don't
makes
actually
sense.
know anything
Yeah.
about Hunter's syndrome.
No,
So,
me neither.
Yeah, if you know anything about Hunter's syndrome,
Tweet us.
tweet us at Eureka on Forge.
Or how the treatment proliferates throughout the body.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the first piece of news. If there's no adverse side effects, they're going to expand it into 9 other patients. So we don't know.
Nice.
Maybe we can give you a little update in a few weeks to see how it's gone. And the end goal is to hopefully do this like soon after birth. So to kind of before damage occurs, sort of thing. So yeah, that's the first bit of news. Quite exciting.
Yeah, that's some pretty good
Like
news.
cutting edge science there. The next news is the UK is leading the charge to phase out coal use by 2030. So that's pretty good. They've launched this new scheme called Powering Past Coal Alliance, which consists of 20 countries, including France, Canada, the UK, and several other European states. And they're acting in reaction to growing anger towards the US, whose president, Donald Trump, insists they will push ahead with so-called clean coal. Classic Trump. So the group hopes that by 2018 it'll have 50 countries signed up, and they're hoping that, it's just kind of another work together, stop climate change thing.
Yeah.
But apparently the UK has been quite good at moving away from coal. So 40% of energy provision in 2012 was coal. But the first full day without coal occurred this year.
Oh, really?
So, apparently so, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think coal is a particularly bad pollutant when you burn it, isn't it? It's not a good one. I mean, I quite like steam trains though, but maybe they're not included in that day without any coal burning.
Maybe they just didn't run any steam trains that day.
Wow, that would be a real shame. What if you just wanted to go on one that day?
I think it's just mind-boggling that we see ourselves as being so technically advanced, but we're powering 40% of our country through dead trees that we've pulled out of the ground.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Well, not anymore though.
Not anymore.
No.
That's right.
That's the future. But anyway, that's all the news that I have today. Just two topics.
Very good.
They're both pretty interesting.
Good news all round.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so our first topic is CTE, dementia and sports. Do either of you guys know what CTE is?
No, I don't.
I do. A little bit. But
maybe
only
you.
because I do the same course as Hugh and he talks about it all the time.
Well, it's something I'm very interested in, so I'm going to tell you what it is. So CTE is short for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a encephalopathy.
What's that?
It's just a general name for a cerebral pathology. Encephalopathy, I think.
And cerebral pathology
Cerebral pathology is a pathology of the brain, but I'm going to get to that.
Okay, we're going to get there. All right.
So it's a neurodegenerative disease similar in its pathology and symptoms to Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
So a lot of people know Alzheimer's disease. It's kind of presents in a similar way to Alzheimer's. So CTE was first described in 1928 when a guy called Dr. Harrison Martland described a group of boxers as having punch-drunk syndrome. It's also been called boxer's dementia and dementia pugilistica. Pugilistica is derived from the Latin pugil for fist.
Okay. So
So it's like a punching disease.
it's associated with like getting hit in the head?
Yeah,
then?
so we've all, I don't know, have you heard the saying punch drunk or someone being referred to as punch drunk?
Is that like boxers are stupid?
No, well, I think that's what a lot of people think it is, but punch drunk is actually a term for ex-boxers or even some current boxers who just present it a bit strange. You know, in times gone by when people didn't know what this was, if someone started to act a little bit funny or their personality changed, they would be referred to as punch drunk.
Okay.
So it's like they're drunk
Slurred,
because they're being
yeah.
punched.
Yeah, they've got slurred speech,
right.
memory loss, their gait can change, they can become unbalanced and unsteady in the way they walk. So before people really knew what it was, they referred to that as being punch drunk. So how is CTE identified and what are the symptoms? I need to make a distinction between signs, symptoms, and pathology. So pathology is like the overall condition ranging from what a brain looks like under the microscope to what the symptoms and signs are. A symptom, this is a good one, is a phenomenon that is experienced by the individual affected by the disease, while a sign is a phenomenon that can be detected by someone other than the individual affected by the disease.
So is a sign detected by both the individual and someone else? Or
I think that depends. Maybe.
okay.
I think a sign is like you would find it in a clinical test. So if you went to the doctor, your symptom might be like, I have a stomach ache, and then the sign would be like a swab of your gut bacteria or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Not a good example. But
Some
you know what I mean.
typical symptoms of CTE are confusion, anger, depression, confusion. I've put that twice.
Obviously got CTE.
I've got such bad CTE. Disorientation, dizziness, and headaches. So not good. Signs of CTE are even worse. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, memory loss, social instability, impulsive behavior, poor judgment, and I've put this with a big question mark on my list, suicidality, because there's a lot of research currently going into whether or not CTE can make you suicidal. It's not conclusive. There needs to be like more long-term study, but quite possibly.
Because is it because I always think about this with neurodegenerative disorders, because a lot of them like depression is a big thing, but then I'm like, how much of that is to do with the actual, like, what's going on in the brain, and how much of that is just a reaction to having a disease? Like, a disease is going to make you depressed, and
I
feel like there's a bit of an interaction there.
I know what you mean. I think in this instance it is
It's
they're
caused
trying
by
to link it directly to the pathology in the brain. But I mean, things like social instability, poor judgment are things that could add to that over time as well. If your life starts to fall apart. I have something later on in my section where I talk about social consequences of it, and some quite interesting anecdotes in there. So cerebral pathology, which is what does the brain look like? So me and Emma both study neuropathology, so we've spent the last 5-6 weeks looking at slices of brains.
Great life.
Lovely.
And the cerebral pathology is quite similar to what you see in Alzheimer's disease. So what you see is these little, what are called neurofibrillary tangles, which is tangles of protein in the brain, and these little like deposits of protein throughout the brain, which you see in a lot of different neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So those are also present in CTE. Another thing you see, and this is pretty scary, is shrinkage of the brain. So you'll see a loss of brain size, basically, and you'll see enlargement of things called the ventricles inside the brain, which are like these fluid-filled spaces. They'll expand, so there'll be more space and less brain, which
you don't want.
You do not want that.
That's also similar to Alzheimer's? Right?
Yeah.
Brain shrinkage in Alzheimer's.
I think that's kind of like what causes most of the symptoms of like neurodegenerative diseases is that you lose the brain volume, and the area in which you lose the brain volume correlates to the symptoms that you have.
I think the clinical term for it is neuronal loss. So just loss of neurons.
Yeah.
So is there a possible, obviously not a causative link, but some kind of, I don't know, what you're describing, it almost sounds like, this obviously isn't the case, but it sounds a bit like you could get Alzheimer's from being punched in the head.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's actually what we are trying to say. And
okay.
I think that's kind of like, the research is a bit new, but I think eventually that's probably what they'll...
Okay.
Obviously, it's not every case of Alzheimer's is caused by being punched in the head.
But interestingly, and I'm going to kind of segue into this, we're not sure what the actual magnitude of the impact you can take to your head before you develop these kind of symptoms and pathologies in your brain is. So it might not be, it might be that you can sustain like quite small, what we would see as like small impacts over time that you might not think are going to damage your brain, but actually will.
They do.
And I've got that in here later on.
Right, okay. Yeah, because I think I did see a news story recently that they're researching like heading in football.
Yeah.
Might cause it as well.
Well, there's a
got that in
documentary
sorry, I'm jumping the
the
gun.
other day about that, wasn't there?
So what can cause CTE and what are the mechanisms? So it can be caused by one-off big concussive injuries like a car crash or a bike crash. It can be caused from the shock wave from explosions, which is more in like military personnel. So I mean, you could be next. So in a lot of military personnel, there are people who weren't necessarily harmed by the explosion, but were close enough that the blast wave has affected their brain.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's a big area of research at the minute too. So most disturbingly, it can be caused by what's called cumulative MTBI, which is cumulative mild traumatic brain injury, which are subconcussive. I've put that in speech marks. So impacts that are quite small and don't cause a concussion, but can accumulate over time to cause this like pathology. So these are things that don't have impacts that don't cause a loss of consciousness
that you might not necessarily notice as bad at the time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so insidious about it.
Yeah.
Is that you might not be able to detect these, or you might pay no attention to
because it's one thing, isn't it, if you're a boxer and obviously feel like you accept a bit of the risk, like it's kind of a bit like, oh well, I'm going to get hit in the head a lot. But then if you're just playing football down the park with your mates every weekend, you're not going to think, oh, I'm putting myself at risk for a neurodegenerative disease.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so scary about it. And like I was saying, we don't know what the impact threshold is. So we don't know in physics terms what the magnitude or directionality like of an impact has to be to injure your brain. So it could actually be quite small, and then that opens the door for saying, well, if you're just having like a domestic accident, like you fall over or you hit your head in your house, but over time could that lead to some kind of
that's interesting. Because your granddad used to fall over all the time, didn't he, James? And he like I feel like, but it's interesting when we talk about like how like a lot of other kinds of neurodegenerative disease, like this sort of thing might affect it, and they do have like late onset, and old people do fall over all the time. So I wonder if there's a bit of a like, a cycle. If you get it and then you fall over more and then you get it worse.
That's exactly what I think is could be part of it. I mean, these things cause like instability in your gait, cause you to be a bit more clumsy and careless, and then that can it can be like a vicious circle. So who typically has CTE? So I've got here military personnel, contact sports players, including but not limited to American football, soccer, rugby, boxing, MMA, professional wrestling, ice hockey, and Aussie rules. I just laughed at professional wrestling. Is it a sport?
Well, do they mean professional wrestling like they do in the Olympics?
No.
They mean like...
I mean like spandex, WWE.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
James got really into that.
For like 2 weeks in first year, I got really into wrestling. I thought
not doing
cool.
it, just watching.
I should say I used to.
I didn't. I would not do it.
I used to compete in freestyle wrestling, which is the real one, but still involves wearing spandex.
Oh, you didn't have like a mask on then, and
no.
Unfortunately
Not while I was competing anyway.
In your spare time.
Okay. Also, victims of domestic abuse can suffer from this. So here's some interesting studies. Almost half of homeless men in a study had traumatic brain injury in their lifetime. So that's from a paper called "Traumatic Brain Injury Among Men in an Urban Homeless Shelter." Observational study of rates of mechanism of injury. If anyone wants to look that up,
jot it down.
jot it down. So I think that ties back into kind of the like loss of social stability and judgment that these things
could be.
Is it the traumatic brain injury causing the later homelessness, or I being homeless causing traumatic brain injury?
In the study I read, because I wondered the same thing, it said that these had typically been sustained before they became homeless.
Okay, so
and it says here, if you bear with me, 87% of those injuries occurred before the men lost their homes. Wow. Assaults were a major cause of those traumatic brain injuries, 60%. Many were caused by potentially non-violent mechanisms such as sports. I don't know if you would call some sports non-violent. Motor vehicle collisions and falls accounted for 42%. So I think that's interesting that young men and women who are playing sports could potentially be setting themselves up for these things in later life. I think that's the scary part of it.
Especially as like, from the age of 11, like you play contact rugby in school and football. It's not like, I know we had a whole lesson which was an hour of heading. In school.
Oh, God.
Which now makes me be like, well, should we really have? Considering there's potential for this to be quite pretty bad.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's seen the documentary with Alan Shearer that was on the BBC recently about heading in soccer.
I remember you talking about it, but I haven't actually seen it.
Good watch if anyone's interested again. But I mean, he went around and looked at all the research that was being done, and it's interesting that they've actually banned heading in youth soccer in the United States. Yeah.
Oh.
But the woman he spoke to from the governing body for soccer in England said that there wasn't enough evidence to ban it here, which I think is a bit rich, to be honest. I think headbutting a flying object,
never going to be good for you, is it?
Yeah,
is never going to be good.
Yeah, it always. I don't know. Before, like, I did it in secondary school. Like, I like you watched like professionals do it, and you were like, well, that doesn't look too bad. Like, it just looks like pretty. But when you actually do it, it's like.
Is it? Because I've never.
Like,
I mean, it's interesting because
it was just a lot harder than I thought.
They don't make girls do that. Like, we never. Well, I mean, we didn't really do football at school, so. Like, it's weird.
Okay. It's just I think it's basic physics. What's the little F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So if the force of the ball being kicked, the mass of the ball times the acceleration. I mean, that's a lot of force. I'm not going to do the calculation right here, but I'm pretty sure that's a lot of force going into your brain. Another anecdotal case was in the news recently. An American football player called Aaron Hernandez, who had the most severe. So I'll give you a bit of background. This guy basically murdered a few people and then committed suicide in jail. Then when they cut his head open, for want of a better word, post-mortem, they discovered that he had stage 5 CTE, so it's a massive shrinkage of the brain. And this guy was 27 years old.
Oh, wow.
And not one of the most prolific players in the NFL. So that shows you how early these things can happen.
These can happen, yeah.
And with anger and aggression and social instability being symptoms of this, it makes you wonder, was that anything to do with his behavior?
Yeah.
Is murderous and then suicidal behavior. Pretty scary.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. What else have we got? Link between motor neuron disease, which is what Stephen Hawking suffers from. There's now it's starting to come out in the literature that could also be a thing, and that's going to be my lab project this summer, is analysing
Stephen Hawking.
No, Stephen. I wish. I'm just asking questions about the universe all the time.
That would be good.
Stephen, what about galaxies? Not the chocolate bar. Right. So my lab project this summer will be analysing 100 motor neuron disease brains, or it might actually be 50 motor neuron disease brains and 50 controls, I can't remember. And then attempting to find evidence of CTE in the motor neuron disease patients, and then draw some kind of link between the two.
Oh, interesting.
So do they actually know why an impact would cause this, like, neurons to die? Like, do they?
I mean,
it's interesting.
Impact.
I mean, I guess like
anywhere is never good, is it? Like,
well, I suppose so, but there's got to be some reason. People, is it correct that your brain like kind of floats?
Yeah.
I've heard that. So like, is it just getting like smashed against the wall? Or?
Well, that's one mechanism of injury. It's called coup contra coup. So whenever your head goes forward, your brain accelerates into the front of your skull and then the back as well. So it's like a kind of back and forwards motion. I have got all this.
It's weird thinking about that. I'm like, what's my brain floating?
I know. It's weird. Ever since I started studying brains and like saw brains, I like just look at people and I'm like, there's a brain in there. And it really freaks me out.
Some people you wonder, is there in there? But there are other mechanisms apart from just the skull. So the brain smashing off the skull. There's a thing called the blood-brain barrier, which stops kind of pathogens from your bloodstream, like bacteria, viruses, and your own immune cells from crossing into the brain. And it's been shown that can be disrupted in impact.
Okay.
So that, and then once the blood-brain barrier is disrupted, it might be that your own immune cells plus pathogens are migrating into your brain, because there is an autoimmune element to some neurodegenerative.
Well, yeah, because that's what happens in MS. That's what I did my undergrad dissertation on about. And like in MS, it's your own immune cells attacking the myelin in your brain. So, and that's because of a breakdown in the blood-brain barrier. Right. And once you've got a breakdown, like all the immune cells like swarm in, and then that can make it worse and stuff. So.
I think the kind of salient point is that this impact might be an environmental factor in a few different neurodegenerative diseases. One of many, obviously, but I can't imagine that it's going to help anyone's brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last bit is how we can prevent CTE. So there are things going on at the minute, I think at UCL, which is a sort of like ambulatory monitoring program. So ambulatory means like on pitch. So they're using these little accelerometers, like which are little patches that the players wear on their skull, which detects the size of the impact, that kind of physics element that I was talking about earlier on. Mm-hmm. They're correlating that to biomarkers in blood. So there's things you can detect in blood that tell you the likelihood that you have a brain injury. So like proteins in blood. I
see.
And then I think from that, they're going to try and establish that kind of reference value for how hard you can get hit before you get these things. There's also a really interesting device coming out, which is like a neck collar that presses on your jugular vein in your neck, which then, it looks really strange too. But what it does is, by pressing on the jugular vein, it makes the vasculature in your brain engorged. So I think your brain occupies more space, which prevents a thing called brain slosh, which is if there's brain plus space, it can like slosh about in there.
Right. Okay.
But this makes your brain fill out the space so it can't slosh about.
That's really weird.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I don't know. I'm a bit doubtful. I'm not doubtful that it worked, but I'm also like, it doesn't sound good for you.
Yeah, how could it be good to cut off blood to your brain?
Yeah.
And last little bit is, I think it's an old adage about boxing gloves. Apparently, the worst thing to ever happen to boxing for brain injuries was the introduction of the glove.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I guess it's so big, isn't it? And
it does add mass to the hand, but also it does nothing to really like attenuate or prevent force going through your brain. All it does is prevent the other guy from breaking his hand.
Oh. And if he's not going to break his hand, he might hit you harder.
He's going to hit you harder, whereas in bare knuckle boxing, you have to hit people in the body and not the face. I know that because I'm Irish. And that is all the things that I know about CTE.
So pretty worrying overall then.
Yeah.
Don't play contact sports.
Yeah. Just wear a hard hat all the time.
Do you imagine,
that actually doesn't help either.
Does it not?
Same thing as the boxing glove.
Oh. Wear a big cushion all the time.
Don't go outside.
That doesn't help either. It's the same thing. It's just don't play contact sports. Get in car crashes, fall over, hit your head and anything. Just live in a bubble.
That's the take-home message for today, folks.
Don't hate me, contact sports people.
Okay, so next up we've got the quiz.
Yay! Okay, are we ready for the quiz?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yes.
I mean, Hugh is an expert
Hugh
on
studied
sports
science and now he's studying CTE.
I didn't know what CTE was until about 5 minutes ago. So
you do.
So it's going to be a bit of a David versus Goliath, but David won, so maybe you will too.
Yeah,
so first things first, we need your buzzers.
I'm going to choose the word potato.
Your Irish roots.
Yeah, just as a stereotype.
I'm going to try and stick on theme of, being punched in the head. So I'm going to go, just
I don't know about that.
Hopefully
Sound like a tennis player or something. Yeah. Okay, right. Well, Are you ready for the first question? Do you want to practice your buzzers or shall we just go straight into
No, I'm good. I better not do mine too many times in a row.
Okay, so the first question is, in which ancient civilization did the discipline of sports science originate? Where can it trace its roots to? So,
Potato.
yeah.
Greece.
Well done. It was ancient Greece.
I was waiting for the options.
Yeah, sorry.
Well done, Hugh.
Apparently there was an ancient Greek physician called Galen who wrote 87 detailed essays about improving health.
I've read 86 of them. I've never heard of them.
How did you know then?
I just guessed.
Yeah, that was pretty obvious thinking about it.
Yeah, well, I was going for Greece, Rome and Egypt, and I was like, they're all pretty ancient, but he just knew. Okay, the second question is, which of these is not a side effect of doping in sports? The options are A, hair loss, B, increased sex drive, or C, blindness.
Blindness.
Yeah.
Yeah! It's 1 point to me.
I just wanted to hear you do your buzzer. I knew the answer.
Okay, and so it's 1-1 so far. Yes. The next question is, what sport are humans evolutionarily adapted to?
Potato.
I think James was just quicker there.
I was going to say marathon running.
Yeah, I'll accept that. I'll accept that.
Yes!
My options were sprinting, swimming, or long distance running. So I thought I might be able to catch you out with sprinting. No, specifically long distance, because I think we have very good thermoregulation as opposed to other animals. So you don't get tired as much.
That's why it is. Apparently, we used to run down animals.
Yeah.
To just like tire them out. We didn't.
Yeah.
And then spear
Just
them.
never caught them. Just kept running till they got
Hugh
tired.
knows it all, but he didn't get the answer.
Not quick enough.
It's because he's a bit slow because he's been hit in the head so many times. Sorry. Okay, the next question is, which sex experiences more concussions in sport?
Potato.
I think James was quicker again. Sorry.
Male.
Nope, you are wrong.
Potato, female.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, so there are two possible reasons for this. One is just that girls have smaller, more slender necks with smaller neck muscles, and so their heads might wobble more if they get hit in the head.
Yeah,
so,
girls are always wobbling their heads.
higher risk of concussion. The second theory is that it's not necessarily that they get more concussion, but just that they report it more. Because I think in male sports there's a bit of a kind of shake it off atmosphere of just like get back into the game.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, boys in sports love Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Whereas girls might be just more likely to report it.
Okay.
So 2-2. Yeah.
I'm annoyed about that.
Yeah. I thought that would catch you out. I thought it was quite a good one.
Did Hugh know it was female?
No, I thought it was males.
Oh.
But again, I think what Emma says, I mean, men probably do get more, but just don't report it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it might be. I don't know whether.
Well, and also the head wobbling.
Yeah.
Well, because more men play sports, but I think it's in comparison, like in the same sport.
Yeah. I see.
But, okay, next question is, which of these sports has an over-representation of left-handedness in the players? A, archery. B, tennis.
Potato.
Yeah.
Tennis.
It is.
Oh,
Sorry.
what?
Yeah, anything that's like a close-range sport where what your partner does affects your performance, if that makes sense. So, like tennis, badminton, fencing, that kind of stuff.
Lefties.
Yeah, lefties are good.
Same in boxing. Southpaw is
Yeah.
very difficult to deal with.
Yeah. So
Going to give you lots of brain injury.
James would be a good boxer or
No, I
tennis
play
player.
sports right-handed though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I am left-handed, but I just play all sports
So
right-handed.
you wouldn't be. Can't be a tennis player.
Ambidextrous.
So the next question is, what are the 3 main types of exercise according to Wikipedia? I'm a bit worried
What?
Hugh might know more about this.
Three
He
main
might
types of
correct me.
exercise.
But there's A, fast, slow and unintentional. B, regular, sporadic or maintained. Or C, aerobic, anaerobic and
Potato.
flexibility. Yeah.
Is it B?
Nope.
What?
Is it A?
No.
Oh!
I've done
C,
it good.
Potato C.
I thought it might be so... I didn't think A sounded reasonable, so...
Wow.
Didn't sound reasonable.
Well, that's why I thought it might be the answer, because you picked a
no,
weird
I think
one.
I did good fake answers there.
I did an undergraduate for nothing.
So the answer is aerobic, anaerobic, and flexibility. So aerobic is like running, like cardiovascular stuff. Anaerobic is like weight training, that kind of stuff, and flexibility is like yoga.
I was
it's
looking for cardiovascular.
Yeah,
was one
so
of them. I thought that was gonna be-
So aerobic is cardiovascular.
I think flexibility threw me because I was thinking like aerobic, anaerobic, and then like mixed aerobic, anaerobic.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this is Wikipedia, so I don't know if that's like a
very good
super known
source.
thing. But anyway, next question is: this is going to be a closest to question. So
Okay,
you both get an answer. What percentage of premature death worldwide could be attributed to inactivity? This is a study that I read that was like in 2008. So I don't know if anything's drastically changed since then.
40%.
40%, okay.
I see. I thought it was 40% in the UK, or maybe America. So I think it's going to be lower than that overall because, like, I don't think people in some other
third world countries,
in third world
yeah.
countries, that's right, might not die that much of inactivity.
Yeah.
There might be other reasons. So I'm going to go for 30%.
So the actual answer is 9%, so lower than you thought. And I think that probably is for reasons like you're saying. Like I think,
So James is closest.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm on 3.
So obviously, yeah, if you're in like a country where AIDS is a massive thing, you're not going to
Yeah.
be dying just because you're sitting on the couch all day.
Inactivity is a pretty Western thing.
Yeah. But still, I thought 9% was quite high. Like that's like almost 10% of deaths could be attributed to just being lazy. Like it's quite easy to prevent even. Okay, question 9. What are the scores right now?
I'm on
Like
3. I think she was on 4.
I think 4.
3, 4. Okay.
Sounds about right.
If that adds
Oh yeah,
up to
because there was
8.
one that neither of you got right.
Oh yeah.
Okay. According to Oscar Pistorius's trainer, where does 85% of his power come from?
Potato. The glutes.
Oh, just gonna Google what glutes are.
I don't know
The
what
bu-
sport he played.
The bum.
Tell you what, I'll read out the answers. I think you're probably like on the right lines, but I've just put it slightly differently. So I've got A, hips, B, knees, or C, his mind. James?
Hips.
Yeah. So that's
The glutes are the hips.
I know.
I
but
think
that's
Hugh
what-
should get that.
because I didn't specify the muscle. This was just like a quote that I
I think
found.
Hugh
so
proved his superior knowledge.
yeah, I feel
there,
like
so.
Hugh knew it better there. So we'll give Hugh that one.
Justice.
I really wanted to say the mind, but,
That's really
but then I was
funny.
like, no, Hugh's already given me a huge clue with the bum. So. If he hadn't said what the glutes were, I'd have guessed mind.
So so is it
5-3.
5-3? Okay. 10. What type of muscle is used during exercise? A.
What?
Cardiac muscle. B. Smooth muscle. Jesus, quick.
Skeletal muscle.
Well, let me finish. No, it's
Oh,
wrong.
what? What do you mean, no?
Let me finish the question. C. Skeletal muscle. Or D. Trick question. All of them.
Oh.
So Hugh.
Potato, all of them.
Yes, it was all of them. Because obviously you're still using your cardiac muscles when you're
Yeah,
exercising.
shut up.
So
I know.
I thought you'd try and catch you out there. So I think we're on 6-3. That's all of the the multiple choicey ones. So we've just got some quick fire ones now.
Okay, I'm ready.
So the first one is spell sport backwards.
I can't deal with that.
You ready?
I can't do it.
T. R.
Yep.
O. P. S.
Yes, well done. Yes. It will be annoying if James beats you on these questions.
I mean, if they're all spelling questions, he's gonna beat me.
No. I mean, this is going to even it out a bit.
Okay. So next question is: who is the fastest runner in the
Potato.
world? Yeah.
Usain Bolt.
Oh.
It was Question 13. What does CTE stand for? I don't know. I think it was Hugh. I think he was just quieter, but he was quicker.
Does it stand for chronic traumatic encephalopathy?
No. Yeah, it does.
Cool. I would have actually said the wrong answer, so it's a good job Hugh got that one.
Yeah, well, I was thinking when he explained it to you at the start, I was like, you should know now for the question.
I just started with the word chronic. And,
okay. Question 14. In a doubles tennis match, how many players are there on the pitch total?
4.
Yes.
I thought it was a trick. I was like, does the umpire count as a player?
I got distracted. I knew that.
Okay, and question 15. What is the most accessible sport?
Potato. Running.
Yes.
Oh, what?
Because it's so easy.
No, I disagree.
It doesn't require any equipment.
Yeah.
No, I think darts is more accessible. Because,
No.
yeah, because you could do that sitting down.
I mean, if you mean accessible for like disabled people, then maybe. But I mean,
That's
in
a good
terms
point,
of,
James.
Yeah.
of
That is a very
equipment
good
and
point.
stuff. So
I mean, actually, I guess if you don't have use of your arms, you can't do darts either. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Good
there's
point.
got to be one more accessible though.
Yes, maybe I used the wrong terminology
Wrestling.
there.
Wrestling, you don't require any equipment, and people who...
And disabled people can do
No,
it.
they can. A guy
You
with...
do wheelchair wrestling?
No, a guy with either one leg or no legs won an NCAA title in the US.
That's really cool.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, Hugh's still getting the point there because
Okay, well,
he come
Hugh's
up with
won
an
anyway,
even better
yeah.
alternative answer.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the scores, but I'm pretty sure Hugh is one.
Yeah, Hugh has
So-
one. Well done, Hugh.
Expected.
Thanks, guys. We're going to be magnanimous in victory.
Put that on your CV.
Right, on to the next discussion, which is on doping. Yeah. Okay, so the next discussion is on doping in sport, which is, does anyone know what doping is?
Taking drugs,
Yeah, where you take
taking-
stuff to enhance your performance.
roids.
Yeah. So according to some people,
According to who?
according to the research in front of me, a doping is when an athlete takes an illegal substance to improve their performance. And there are 5 classes of banned drugs, the most common of which are stimulants and hormones. So that's what's often used. I wouldn't know myself. I've never done anything.
You've got no hormones.
No, yeah, I don't. Never got any hormones. And okay, so yeah, drugs are generally banned for. Well, they have to match 2 of 3 reasons. Okay, so
like any two.
so
3 criteria.
yeah, so there's 3 criteria, and if a drug matches 2 of them, then it gets banned and it's illegal to use in sport. So does anyone want to guess at some of the criteria?
Yes.
Go on then.
Is it harmful? Is one of them harmful?
Yes. So one of them
Okay.
is that it poses a threat to the athlete's health. That's one of
Gives
them.
an unfair advantage.
So I think it's that it like enhances performance.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it is
Yeah.
an unfair advantage. Yeah, and
Okay.
the third one, which I think is a bit ambiguous, but is that it violates the spirit of the sport. So I guess that's also
see.
part of an unfair advantage, but
Yeah.
that's quite open
Yeah.
to interpretation. In my
I guess
opinion.
that's maybe because something that you might take for one sport might not affect your performance in a different kind of sport.
Yeah, like I think like beta blockers are banned in
Oh, in archery.
and
yeah.
shooting, but if you take beta
In
blockers
what?
in archery and shooting,
Ah,
because you need a
Because-
steady hand,
okay.
But then if you're taking it and you're running, it doesn't really
it
matter.
doesn't matter.
it would reduce your performance. It would make you worse at it.
Oh, would it?
Well, I mean, if you take beta blockers, I
Oh,
think they make you really drowsy and lethargic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Fair enough.
So yeah, if a drug matches any 2 of those criteria, then it's generally banned. As I said before, it's normally hormones and stimulants, and those can be traced back for a very, very long time, back as far as ancient Greece.
Oh,
But-
the start of sports science.
I know, the very start of sports science.
I think that's stimulants. Like,
Is that just
yeah,
stimulants?
because stimulants have been around in plants forever, but I think hormones are a fairly recent
Right,
thing.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So just stimulants can be traced that far back, but it wasn't until 1920 that a governing body actually had to start regulating what athletes could and couldn't use. So there are a few general strategies that naughty athletes might use to dope themselves. Is that what it's called?
Dope them. I think.
To dope yourself.
I hope that's what it's called.
Right. So one of the most common forms of doping is using anabolic steroids. I think everybody's more or less heard of those. I wasn't actually sure that these were not allowed until recently because I thought.
Oh, you thought that was just like a thing that people did?
Yeah, I thought people at the gym just like used.
Well,
them.
they might be, but it's different when you're in a competing sport.
Yeah, I think.
So if you just want to be like muscly, then they might be allowed. Maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they're illegal per se, but they're definitely banned in sports.
They're banned in sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are other things like because I used to compete in sports, so WADA every year, so the World Anti-Doping Association will put out a list of things that you can take, and sometimes that includes things that you used to be able to take. So like certain like pre-workout drinks have ingredients in them,
Really?
and people have got banned for taking like a pre-workout drink that was previously thought to be alright. I mean, you can buy this over the counter in a shop.
Really?
It's like legitimate, but if you take it, you get banned. Same as I think like Sudafed is a pseudoephedrine, so the decongestant Sudafed.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
You can get banned for that. People have been
Wow.
banned for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do they So say if I took some anabolic steroids in January and I like got really muscly, and then I didn't get tested till next January, and I stopped halfway through.
Well, that's the crux of the problem. I think is that athletes have these strategies where they will like go away to a training camp in the middle of nowhere, where the doping people can't find them, and then do loads of dope themselves. As it were.
Yeah.
They'll dope themselves real hard off of these training camps, and then come back. Let themselves like clear out, and then come back
And pretend they haven't.
and be clean. But I think the chemists at WADA who test these things have developed strategies now where you can reach way back into the past in someone's metabolites and their
Oh, okay.
A bit of a cat and mouse game,
Yeah.
really, then, isn't it?
absolutely, yeah.
That's interesting.
And they freeze urine samples, so whenever you give it a urine sample, they'll give you 2 bottles. One they'll test now, one they'll put in storage for later, in
Right.
case testing catches up, as
Yeah.
it were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Which I
interesting.
mean, I think it was Beijing 2008. Like loads of people lost their medals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can
Retrospectively.
lose a lot of medals. I think one famous example was Lance Armstrong. I
Yeah,
think he just did he just admit to doping?
yeah. I
And
mean,
then-
I think he was like 90% drug, like 10% Lance.
Yeah, and he got all his Tour de France medals taken away. So yeah, it can happen,
Yeah.
folks.
Mm-hmm.
Other things that you use, as we've already mentioned, stimulants. They make you more alert, which is good. Well, if you want to be more alert in your sport, obviously it's not good. As we've already established, it's not good to take them because they're not allowed in the sport.
Yes. Caffeine over a certain amount is banned.
Is it really?
Or it was. Whenever I was competing, you couldn't take over 600 milligrams of caffeine, or they would ban you for doping yourself.
That's weird because people just have caffeine
Yeah,
every day.
just normal.
But I think to get 600 milligrams of caffeine into your body, you would either have to drink like an obscene amount of coffee or take it in like a tablet form.
Okay, so it's not. I'm not getting that every day. Then.
No.
Okay. Yeah, some less common ones include blood doping, which I really don't like the sound of this one.
Oh, is that where you take the blood out of your body and
Yeah.
oxygenate it and put it back
And then
in?
you put it back in later.
Not even oxygenate it. It's where you
Ugh.
train yourself up to a level of like really, really high fitness, and then take your blood out,
Yeah.
and then you put it back in just before you compete.
Oh, so it's like you take the blood out when you're like at your peak. Or something.
I'm not sure how it works. There's some strategy. I think I'm missing something there, but it's not. I don't think you like doctor the blood in any way. It's just your own blood from a time when you were
okay, when you were like better.
Yeah, peaking. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's like when they take they take young people's blood and give it to old people, and apparently it's supposed to like revitalize them a bit.
It's creepy.
Yeah, I know. That's what my dad was like. Oh, I'm gonna take some of your blood, Emma, when I get old. I was like, no, thank you.
So they obviously all come with risks. So anabolic steroids, the most common one, can give you high blood pressure and increase the risk of heart attacks. And in men, it can reduce sperm count, lead to shrunken testicles and erectile dysfunction, baldness, and breast development. So
all things you don't want.
Oh no,
can be bad. And in women, it can increase facial hair and body hair. You can lose your breasts, get a deeper voice. You can have an increased sex drive, and you can disrupt your menstrual cycle. So anabolic steroids can cause a lot of problems.
Not good.
Yeah. Stimulants can also cause cardiovascular problems, and you can also get quite easily addicted to them, I think. So obviously, that's not good for getting off them again, and all sorts of heart problems and overheating in the body, yeah, that's
Diuretics. Diuretics, is that in there?
Diuretics? No.
Diuretics.
Diuretic. Oh, diuretics is a. Oh yeah, diuretics and masking agents are used to remove fluid from the body, which can hide other drug use, or in sports such as boxing and horse racing, help competitors make the weight. What does that mean?
So make the weight is, if I weigh 100 kilos and the weight that I need to make is 95 kilos, I will like take a diuretic, or I will like sit in a sauna until I drop below that, and then get on the scales, and then rehydrate to put it all back on again. So boxers and fighters want to go into the competition being as heavy as possible, so it's an advantage to be able to cut more weight. So I used to cut 10 kilos without diuretics, I should say. So I would weigh about 107 kilos and compete at 97. Wow. So I would do that by like running, wearing bin bags under my clothes.
Oh, that's
like
crazy.
Cutting out
that does
water.
not sound healthy.
No, it's 100% terrible for you. But I mean, certain sports are putting rules in place now to stop things like that happening. Like judo, I think you can't. They weigh you twice. They weigh you the night before the competition and the day of. And if there's a certain percentage difference in your weight, then they ban you. Oh. But I mean, these things are still like everywhere in
How long
sports.
do you have to rehydrate after the weighing?
It's you weigh in the night before, so you've got under 24 hours.
Wow.
And I should say, being dehydrated is another risk factor for CTE.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Dear,
so that
dear.
could be another cause. So yeah, I think that's the end of discussion 2, really, unless Hugh's got any more facts.
Ever taken steroids, Hugh?
No, absolutely not.
Plays fair.
Play fair. I do have CTE though. But I think the message there is don't do drugs, don't get hit in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good advice from the show. All right, we'll move on to the next discussion.
Okay, so the third topic we're going to whiz through because we've not got much time is about the limits of human performance. So it kind of ties into the doping thing. How good can a human be without drugs? So in terms of running, the fastest runner currently, as we found out in the quiz, is Usain Bolt, who has done a 100-meter sprint at nearly 28 miles an hour. So pretty fast.
So fast.
However, there has been some research recently that said, in theory, we could perhaps run as fast as 40 miles an hour, which is...
What?
I mean, it sounds crazy.
What?
It sounds crazy to me.
How
think
fast did he run?
28 miles an hour.
Nah, I'm not buying that 40 minutes. No way.
Because, well, the theory of it is that the main hindrance to speed is that our limbs can only take a certain amount of force when they strike the ground. So I think it's that the limit to running is how hard your legs can hit the ground.
Right.
And elite sprinters can apparently apply peak forces of 800 to 1,000 pounds with a single limb during each sprinting step. So that suggests that that's pretty high. They may be operating near the top limits of their muscles and their limbs. But in this recent study, they found that our limbs can actually handle more force than what is applied during top speed running, apparently. So the results showed that the critical biological limit is actually imposed by time. So when you're running, you haven't got a lot of time the force is applied in a very short space of time.
I actually worked during my undergraduate in a biomechanics lab, and this is what we looked at, was how much force goes through your lower limbs when you run. So we used a force plate and all sorts of weird cameras and stuff to look at it. And I think the argument is big heeled shoes for recreational runners and stuff allow you to hit the ground, you feel more comfortable hitting the ground really hard with your heel, and put these insane forces through your legs and knees. It leads a lot of people to knee injury and stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a lot of casual runners. It kind of ties in there, I think.
Yeah. Okay, that's
This is where there was weird toe shoes, the 5 feet.
Oh, yeah.
So
are they supposed to be better?
yeah, because there's no padding in them, you're not as comfortable just absolutely hitting the ground real hard with your foot. You're a lot more careful about it.
That's interesting. Okay, so I think the point of this research is that if in theory you could hit the ground at that max force, you would be able to run at 35 to 40 miles an hour. So I think it's just the limit of time limits the force, which limits the speed. So I don't know if there's a way to stop one of those limits, but if you could, I think it's just what your legs made out of, making the bone and the muscle able to stand up to those forces. Yeah, so I wonder if if you had
a mech suit.
if you had a mech suit, or if you had if you were disabled and you had bionic. Is bionic the right word? Bionic.
Prosthetic?
Yeah, because there was that thing about Oscar Pistorius, wasn't it? That actually his legs some people prosthetics might benefit him. But I wonder if you were amputated right up to the hip, whether maybe you would be faster at running.
All the force for sprinting comes from your hips.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, so that's all we have on the limits of human performance, because we've got to wrap it up pretty quick.
I think that's about it for this week.
Yeah.
So hope you all had a good show.
Yeah, I did. Hope you learned something.
Hope everyone can understand my accent. I'm saying.
It's too late if they can't.
Yeah, it's already recorded now.
Take more interest in regional accents.
Yep, and Eureka should be back next week with an episode on colour. So that'll be good.
Nice.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
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 Thanks for listening.